I was kind of wistfully dreaming that it'd be easier to have a company just remake like the Sega Saturn. You know, the millions and millions of dollars the Sega Saturn made.
Sure.
Like, you have proprietary software and hardware, and you want to make a lot of money, and yeah, it's 30 years too late, 20 years too late. Why can't you find some separate little house that remakes those today? I'll play those.
Like the games or the consoles?
All the above.
Actually, interestingly enough, they just cracked the Saturn. I think the Saturn was the one that had never been, like, hackers had never been able to get into, to be able to emulate and all that stuff, and they just did it, like, I want to say sometime late last year.
Whoa. They need to hit me up.
Yeah, well, maybe you should go into business with said hackers and start releasing your own Saturn. What would you call it?
The obvious is the Saturn Uranus, like Sega Uranus. I can't do that, so I'd probably go with some other Greek or Roman god.
Pee Kako Poo Poo?
I was thinking more like Hermes.
Oh, okay.
Welcome back, everybody, to the FoundryCast. I'm Cyrus.
And I'm Zach, and for some reason, every time you prompt me to say my name, I always have food in my mouth.
Well, first of all, why are you eating when we just said we were going to go live now?
Why wouldn't I be eating?
Granted, and those are really tasty cheese straws.
They're cheese straws. You put food in front of me.
Did you like cheese straws as a kid?
Yeah. We grew up with a family farm, and we would always go down there during the summertime and get the fresh cheese straws right out of the ground. Yes. Delicious.
Oh, yeah, well, fresh farm cheese straws.
You've never had cheese straws unless you had them fresh off the vine.
I never really liked them until I grew up. I don't know why. It's just one of those, like, bar foods that I sort of rediscovered. I'm like, okay, yeah, these are pretty good, because those are the smoky bacon kind. Mm-hmm. Oh, fantastic.
They're delicious.
But more back to the FoundryCast.
Yes.
It's been a very interesting month so far. We've been working really hard on some individual projects.
Yeah.
Barreling through Witches and Wizards month. Mm-hmm. Actually, a little behind on a project that I meant to have up probably tonight was when it was going to post. But overall, it's been a lot of fun. And I'm going to go ahead and throw things to you in the newsroom. What's going on in the news?
Yeah, let's hit some quick news updates in nerddom and whatsits. Just a few things to talk about. Let's see. Samurai Jack's coming back. You excited?
Did we talk about that before? Because if we didn't, we need to.
I might have mentioned it, but hey, it's coming up soon.
I am going to go through every episode. I think there was 4 seasons. It was 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I've seen at least half of the episodes just by watching Cartoon Network, and then I have like the final season on DVD.
Yeah.
Incredibly inspiring. I loved it, and there is more story to tell. And it was kind of framed that way. So this could be just like Quantum Leap and continue on and on and on and on. Right. Because our titular hero, his age may not matter. He may be out of space and time where his battle just continues on. I'm super excited for it to come back.
I think it's going to be cool. Sorry. Anytime God bless it, his name is hard to say. Anytime Gennady Tartakovsky. Gennady. I'm just going to say Tartakovsky. How about that?
Tartakovsky.
Anytime Tartakovsky's working on a project, I'm excited because he does great stuff. So good to have it back.
Yeah, I'm a fan of his entire creative house.
Let's see, what else? We've got... I just read this today. There are rumors, not 100% officially confirmed, but rumors there's going to be a Nightwing movie coming up.
There could be. There was a lot of rumors about that after The Dark Knight Rises, because we had the...
nod to it.
The nod to it, the Robin, not Robin character, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He's really come into his own as an actor and a musician.
Yeah.
I think he could do a great job with it. I don't know if there's enough of a fan base there. I think we've spoken before off air. The short called Grayson. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
that is something I think we need to do when the cameras are off here. It's essentially a fan-made movie. The entire script has been written where something happens, Batman dies, Dick Grayson goes into retirement, and he ends up marrying Batgirl Barbara, and they go into seclusion, or that Batman's death triggers him to get back in shape and come back and fight. Yeah. And there is a huge conspiracy that involves Superman and Green Lantern and Wonder Woman, and like Superman is being controlled, or he's on the side of evil, or something like that. It ends up being like a 7-minute movie trailer.
Yeah.
That when you watch it, you go, oh my god, this could be a fantastic movie. And it's filmed on a shoestring budget, but it looks fantastic. When that came out 15 years ago, 10 years ago now, there was a lot of clamor, but it was just a script that was written and turned down, and the guy decided, I'm going to make the full movie preview.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's enough interest in it. What do you think?
You know what? Actually, now that I look at it and pulled up the article, it's official. It's officially been announced, and it's going to be Chris McKay, who directed the Lego Batman movie, is going to direct it. So,
is this going to be the Lego Robin movie?
No, it's going to be an actual full-on Nightwing movie, apparently. But yeah, we'll see. Who knows? Let's see. Other movie news. Patrick Stewart announced in an article I read today that he is officially done playing Professor Xavier.
Well, half of the Marvel cast is done playing their old characters because they've aged out of it, and there are new stories to tell.
Yeah. Supposedly the wrap-up comes at the end of Logan, which I've heard early reviews are saying it's really, really good, but apparently after that, just like Hugh Jackman, he's kind of bowing out as that character, which is fine. Because now you've got, what's his name, James McAvoy?
Playing and it. And then if they go, spoilers, I'm just going to warn everybody, I have not read spoilers about the movie per se, but it is very clear, having read the comics, what they're doing here. Yeah. And what Logan protecting this little girl means they can continue to tell a very unique story and move on from the Wolverine character. Hopefully they don't just recast him 5 times like they did Spider-Man.
Yeah, they will. They want money.
Maybe. Maybe, but find a young, good actor that could stick with it.
Speaking of actors, just quick touching on a recent loss. Bill Paxton passed away a couple of days ago.
Yeah, pretty sudden. Complications from surgery?
Just thought we'd mention it. Yeah, he was having surgery. I forget what it was actually on, but complications, and kind of surprising. I think he was 61. Just thought I'd mention it because he's actually been in a bunch of nerdy stuff. He was in Aliens, Terminator, Apollo 13, one of my favorite movies of all time, and he's all over the place.
He usually plays... he was also in Weird Science.
Weird Science, yeah.
The thing about him is, I found him to play really great bad guys because I enjoyed hating him.
Yeah.
When he played a good guy, I was 50-50.
Yeah.
I think he was just getting into the master strokes of his ability, being a little older, and being able to play some newer roles that we probably had a good extra decade of him really coming into his own one more time. And I hate that we're going to miss out on that.
Yeah, I hate another celeb loss. Surprisingly enough, sometimes it's not surprising when they go, but for him it was.
I have some celebrity news and semi-celebrity news. So are we still in award season currently?
Yeah, I think it's fair enough to say. Yeah,
there's already been several big award shows.
Yeah,
and this is coming on the tail end of the Oscars.
Yeah,
which I still cannot watch.
No, I don't care even.
I want people to win and get notoriety for what they've done, but it usually ends up being rich people giving love to more rich people.
Patting themselves on the back for how brave they are.
Yeah, good job. You made a movie that made $1 million.
Yeah, good job.
Made you millions.
You did
of dollars.
2 weeks of work and got millions of dollars for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know La La Land's going to win almost everything.
Yeah.
But the interwebs are kind of on fire because Suicide Squad won an Oscar.
Did it really?
It won an Oscar. And they're saying, can you imagine that this person never won an Oscar? This great movie never won an Oscar.
Yeah.
But Suicide Squad did. Did they win for Best Actor? No. It was for Best Makeup.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
They deserve that for Best Makeup.
Sure.
What are you going to give it to one where everyone's just wearing pancakes?
Exactly. Like, oh yeah, well, we have a movie set in the 17th century and they have extra makeup. Well, who cares? Yeah.
No, you give it to the...
something with creature effects,
is it
basically.
Croc?
Yeah.
Killer Croc.
Killer Croc.
You had the guy, El Diablo, who had the skull tattoo that looked great.
Even Leto's Joker, I'm not a fan of what they did with it, but the makeup and the costuming on it was cool.
And I was going to say that it was probably Harley Quinn. That she just looked fantastic and creepy, but it was this weird, she's psychotic and there's an ugliness to her, but still an intense sexuality and then vulnerability, and it was all in the same makeup.
A really good update to the design of that character, I think.
I think so. It was still a little bit, let's put a girl in tight pants.
Well, yeah, but Harley Quinn's always been that sort of sex appeal kind of character, so kind of expect that.
Well, it was that she was sexy and that she used it as part of her menace.
Right.
And not just that we made her sexy be sexy. It was the thing that and it kind of emboldened her to be that way because it was a way that dumb guys would fall for her.
Yeah.
And at the box office, they did. Still kind of critically panned.
It did okay. It ended up doing okay. Better than Batman v Superman, for sure. Other movie news. This one actually has me really excited. Actually, it touches on a topic we talked about last episode about Netflix stuff and the stuff they're putting out. They have announced a new movie that they kind of bought up. Netflix bought up that they're releasing called Bright. Have you seen this?
No.
The trailers just came out. It looks really cool. So Bright is going to be a movie. It's a Will Smith movie, which I'm sort of on the fence with Will Smith.
50-50 so far.
Yeah, sometimes he's great, sometimes he's not. But it's a cop. It looks like it's going to be like a cop drama sort of movie.
We don't have nearly enough of those.
Here we go. Here's the twist. It's a modern day cop drama.
Okay, modern day.
But it takes place in a world that reminds me a lot of Shadowrun, where orcs and elves exist. And Will Smith plays a human cop, and his partner is the first orc cop. And they're like investigating apparently like some elves, and like I was reading like cast synopsis, and there's like the FBI has a magic division that has some elves in it and stuff.
This has to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and I can't wait to actually watch it.
I'm so excited because it genuinely looks like it's not set in the future, but it looks like a Shadowrun movie, because that's kind of the Shadowrun universe is like it's a modern Earth, but with these fantasy races that just kind of appeared. So
that sounds like a lot of fun.
It's going to be, I don't know, it could be terrible, it probably will be. But
could we, like, halfway, at the end of season 1, kill off Will Smith and bring in someone else? No offense to Will Smith, but I think Will Smith has a problem just being Will Smith.
He never gets killed in any of his films. Except off-screen in Independence Day 2.
Yeah, that's right. Between Independence Day 1 and 2, he dies, I guess.
But sounds interesting. It just got kind of announced. I've seen some like production stills and some other stuff, so jury's still out on whether or not it's going to be good. But I like the idea that it's something different and new. If
they treat it like a Fox show, it's going to be terrible. If they treat it at all like one of the Marvel things that have been produced, or even to a degree a sci-fi, sci-fi has raised their game with several shows in the last 2 years. If Netflix can pull it off...
It's not a show, though. It is a movie.
It's a movie?
It's a movie.
Oh.
It's a film.
If they spin it off into a series...
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing they probably will if it's
like
popular.
Like Gotham?
Mm-hmm. Because it looks like it would be a neat world you could set other stories in.
I'll check it out. It's called Bright.
Bright. And one last piece of fun news that I saw today. SpaceX announced that they have intentions next year of running a manned mission around the moon. They're going to put a couple of people, slingshot them around the moon, bring them back.
Can we please do this already? For goodness sake, can we slingshot some more people up around the moon? One, I want there to be more people alive that have been around the moon.
Have seen the moon up close.
And this whole dark side of the moon thing, that's not how that works. There is not a part of the moon that's constantly dark. That is a myth. But yeah, I
you say the back side of the moon.
Yeah. The butt side of the moon.
The other side.
Yeah, and here's a reason. I am very tired you and I love conspiracy theory. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons that's driving another project that we may be doing here soon.
Yes.
And I watch hours and hours of videos every month about people still claiming that there are space stations on the moon that aliens use.
Stuff on
I want to get more people with the newest high definition cameras.
Yeah.
And to learn even more about it.
Yeah.
But two, to get around there and not have... And, okay, if they're aliens, we're going to find out.
Yeah.
We're going to find out.
Well, so
and the flat Earth theory, we're going to find out.
Yeah, well, yeah. Part of the announcement said that they haven't actually said who the two people are, but I think the quote said they've taken substantial deposits. So it actually sounds like they're not even trained astronauts. These are people that paid for the privilege of going.
Sure.
So that ties into... These are laymen, so it's going to be really hard to say they're in on the conspiracy if it's just Elon Musk. Well, he runs the company, or doesn't run the company, but whatever. If it's Bill Gates, or if it's Bob Johnson, who owns a factory in New Jersey, who paid $500,000 to go around the moon. It's going to be interesting to hear Bob Johnson say that there were not any aliens that he could see,
I think it's more about the cameras, but also, why two people? Can we not just send the magic school bus up there? I know how much it costs to send a single pound into space, but if you're already trying the SpaceX style where it's tethered to a plane, I believe?
I don't know. I assume this mission... Yeah, I'm assuming this mission will use that same technology. I'm sure it'll be multiple missions to build a payload in orbit and then go from orbit. Would be my guess is the way that's much more...
Okay, I thought they were doing the low Earth orbit.
What they do is they take a mothership plane and spaceship, Spaceship 2 I think it is now, drop it ignites at high altitude and goes the rest of the way. It saves a bunch of money and is partially reusable. But my guess is they'll probably launch multi-missions, build a ship in orbit, put the guys on that ship and launch it from orbit to go around the moon.
Let's do it, man. I am so excited.
They're going to make it happen. I'm scared out of my mind, though, for those folks. Going around the moon is orders of magnitude more difficult than anything SpaceX has done up to this point.
Sure.
And it's terrifying that they're going to do it since they haven't even really put anybody
Well, the funny thing is you're not sending classically trained astronauts up there. Mm. Now, these people may still be
I assume they'll go through some training,
pilots,
but yeah.
But if you're, this isn't Apollo 13.
Yeah.
You can't get stuck up there and just throw Apollo 13 in the DVD player and go, all right,
let's do what they did.
Let's just do what they did. We got to make this hose work.
My guess is going to be fully automated and they'll just be ballast, basically.
But if anything's wrong, it's like, we're facing the moon now. We're headed right for it. Pull up on the stick. There's no stick.
Wait, is it the dark side or the right side of the moon we're going to crash into?
Every side of the moon is the right side of the moon.
So, extrapolating a little bit from the news, I saw an article that I thought I'd bring up and maybe we could have a little bit of a longer discussion on because it struck me as a little interesting. And it kind of touches on definitely some topics that we've discussed in past episodes. I was reading an article today about, are you familiar with the Green brothers?
Not yet.
John and Hank Green. They do a lot of YouTube stuff. They're extremely popular.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I watch the videos all the time. They do a lot about Disney princesses that should have been canonized or...
Sure.
No, they're
they
very
do all
entertaining.
kinds of stuff. They
like theories. Of,
exactly. Yeah, they explain science. They do a lot of cool stuff. They're really, really cool with
I love them.
Big fan. They do cool stuff. But it was an article in the Boston Globe talking about Nerd Nation, I guess, is a thing that they're doing. And basically they had a convention in Boston. And this article is like a glowing description of the convention and what the Green Brothers do.
Cool.
3,300 people came to this convention, et cetera,
nice.
et cetera, et cetera. But basically the idea, the theme of the name of the article is Nerd Nation calculates that it has arrived. And kind of the theme of the article was that they don't explicitly say because of this convention and the Green Brothers, but it's sort of implied because of this convention and the Green Brothers, being a nerd is now okay and accepted and cool and mainstream. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way when I was reading it because I'm like, wait a minute. it's been okay and cool to a certain extent to be a nerd for a long time. All of a sudden, you're anointing these guys like... It almost feels like they're saying, well, these two guys are the king of the nerds who are leading the charge and making it, normalizing nerddom. And it's like, well, no. I mean, they're not doing anything different than a lot of people before them. You know, actually, before we started recording, we were talking about Adam Savage from Mythbusters. The Mythbusters were doing this kind of stuff,
of course,
years ago, making science cool.
Okay, and not having read the article, I can't say for certain.
Yeah.
The benchmarks on a thing like that are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very subjective.
Yeah.
It's like, at what point do you feel comfortable with who you are?
Right.
I thought I felt comfortable with myself until now, and now I feel that I'm more comfortable with myself.
Sure.
Nerd culture, you could say, when Star Trek became a hit, the Next Generation became a hit show, that was when it was. When Stranger Things debuted and became...
was a big deal.
A massive deal. That was it.
Yeah.
When Big Bang Theory, when that became the number one show, comedy on television, at what point does nerd culture become acceptable?
Well, that's a great question. And I think, actually, Big Bang Theory is a good example. Is it even safe to say that nerd culture is fully accepted? We were talking about Big Bang Theory earlier, and I was saying that in a lot of ways, I feel like Big Bang Theory is a show that makes fun of nerds.
Well, and I hope I don't get any heat for saying this. Saying that Big Bang Theory is integral to nerd culture is like saying Will and Grace is integral to gay culture. Yeah. Which it truly isn't, but it is one of the first forays that gets to explore it in a way. And it has some loyalty to it, but at the same time, it's just a comedy. Sometimes they will use comedy to express a point and explore a topic, but beyond that, it's still just a comedy show. Yeah. And it needs to be funny and silly and zany and stereotypical. And nerds are easy to stereotype, but hard to fully define. Yeah. With the Green Brothers, I think what they're doing is just saying, we have taken an active role to take the things that we're passionate about, which might be considered nerd and geek culture, and bring it to the limelight. And we're not afraid to say that's what we're doing specifically, as opposed to saying, I want to do a show about science. I want to do a show about being in this book of dragons and giants and walls of ice. Like, okay, you're in a fantasy show that in and of itself is very singular. Versus, we want to speak out as proponents of this culture.
That's part of what it feels like is they make no illusions about like their political viewpoints and things like that, and that's becoming more and more common in culture in general. But I think one of the quotes in the article said that their push of their philosophy is that we just want they see being nerdy as just really, really liking something a lot.
Exactly, and that's
a pretty fair like general description of if you're
it's fandom.
It's like we've talked about guys who like fantasy sports. That's super nerdy. But it's not traditional nerdy. It's jocks and sports and that kind of stuff. But it's super nerdy. You're like obsessed with something.
You're obsessed with statistics.
Yeah.
And what happens? It just happens to be a little more brutal, and it also happens to be a competitive sport. Yeah. As opposed to a scripted storyline or an open-ended, massive multiplayer organization. That. I think that it's a fair assessment, although not truly accurate. They are not the first ever. They're not the prime, but they are stand out, and that's good, because take your celebrity and do something with it. Don't squander it by being a jerk online, having things come out about you, and then have to have the Wall Street Journal turn on you when you could have done more and better. I mean, yes, And not to get specifically, but yeah, some people will raise money for a charity, but they still won't say, hey, follow me, friends, it's okay. And if the Green Brothers can do that, I find that to be more noble than raising $1 million for cancer research.
I just get a little concerned, especially because I know a lot of their fans, like any other YouTube celebrity, are young. Right. And there's positives to that because you're telling young people in middle and high school that it's okay to like what you like, that kind of thing. But it also, like other internet celebrities, to me, especially reading this article and looking at some of the pictures in the article, it feels almost like a cult of personality thing, where it's not we're celebrating being nerds, we're celebrating liking these guys, and we are fans of them, and that affirms who we are. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing about the Green Brothers in particular is their personalities are not all that strong. They're not wearing goofy costumes and making silly jokes. Kind of guys, They're talking to you and reviewing more like top 10 videos. Yeah. So I could see where someone could make that argument, but I don't think so. There are many other YouTubers who are all about themselves.
I'm not saying it's their intention to do that, but I feel like...
Could that be part of it?
I feel like these days, almost any famous nerd internet person... I feel like that's part of the component, is that intentionally and most of the time not intentionally, there is that cult of personality being built around them and this self-worth being invested in their success. And it's like any other fandom. You like Star Trek for Star Trek, but you also like it because it gives you an identity that you like it. Okay.
I thought you were saying it's because of... I mean, not specifically, but in this instance, because of the Green Brothers and their personality.
No.
And I was going to say that's like any other politician. You got to get behind the person as well as the message.
It's just this idea of going viral. That phrase that has gone viral. It's like any other thing that they have gone viral as content producers, and that. It becomes you like them because you're supposed to like them, rather than you like them what they're doing. And that's, kind of circling back to what we were discussing earlier, like Big Bang Theory is a great example of, that's one of the things that makes me question this idea that, nerddom has arrived and it's okay to be a nerd. Because, in the mainstream, comic book movies are popular and the Green Brothers are popular and et cetera, et cetera. It's very, very, very surface level. I think it's still, in a lot of ways, not cool to go to the comic shop every day and get 10 new comic books and have stacks in your garage of comic books that you love and you go back and read.
True.
It's not cool, even today, for me to build my own gaming rig, my own PC, part by part, and go into detail. Those things. But it's cool for me to play Overwatch. But it's not cool for me to understand the underpinning. We've talked about sitting down and wanting to design a game together. I don't think that's cool. I don't think mainstream would consider that cool.
I think that's more cool than you think.
We think it's cool. Well, I don't think the mainstream would see.
It depends on how you boil it down. I don't know. Mainstream, you go out and design a car, you're an engineer. You go out and design a war game.
You're a neckbeard nerd in your mom's basement.
Maybe not so much, because it still has to do with statistics and mathematics, and it has to do with game theory. And one of my new favorite words, ludology.
Yeah.
Game studies. Do you know that word?
Yeah. I've heard it before.
Okay.
It's not part of my vocabulary. But.
It's one that became part of my vocabulary, the difference between ludology and narratology, which we'll save that for another big, long topic sometime. Okay. Because I would like to get one of our friends who designed games in college, love to get his input on ludology as opposed to narratology. Anywho, the study of games, all that, the people who made Warcraft, the biggest MMO RPG maybe of all time, or it's still just
World of Warcraft biggest of all time,
huge. Hi, I'm one of the lead developers of that game. People aren't going to go, nerd. They're going to go, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, but if you say, hi, I design board games in my basement.
Well, you added that in my basement. I work for Mattel and I design board games.
Right, okay. Yeah, that's legitimizing it. But I feel like, being on Big Bang Theory legitimizes it, being a nerd. being a nerd. Yeah, okay. So on Big Bang Theory, they play a card game that's suspiciously similar to Magic. But that legitimizes that. But if you go around and say, I play Magic, you're a nerd. You know what I mean? I don't know. So what got me kind of thinking about this was in the article they stress, and this is to their absolute credit, one of the things that the Green brothers really fight against and stress hard is like bullying in schools.
Yes.
They come out against it, and that's
yes.
more power to them because that's super important. But it feels like this article is like, oh, it's okay to say you're a nerd in school, you're not going to get bullied for it anymore. If you come out in school and you say, I like to play Halo, yeah, everybody's going to think you're, okay, yeah, cool, me too. If you come out and say, I like to play Dungeons and Dragons, I think you're still probably going to get picked on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Maybe so.
So I feel it's disingenuous to, it reminds me, and forgive me for getting political here, but it reminds me of when Barack Obama was elected president.
Yeah.
And people came out and said, racism in America is dead. It's like, no, it's not at all.
Well,
we made great strides, but it's still present.
Do you mind saying again, what was the comment that the article said? Because I think that's part of it, because being a nerd and being ashamed of that is dead. That's not true.
Yeah.
And that can't be true. People are going to be ashamed of a lot about their life.
Okay, actually, I just brought up the article again. Here's an article talking about one of their fans. She's in MIT. Awesome. Mm-hmm. She's from North Dakota. Cool. It said that she describes herself in middle school.
Why is North Dakota cool?
Sure, I don't know. I've been there before. It's beautiful.
I mean, North Carolina, if someone's like, hey, you're from North Carolina, cool. Like, why?
North Carolina.
Like New York, there's more of New York, you come from the big time.
New York smells.
New York State, that's not as cool as New York City. Sorry, I just want to know why North Dakota was cool.
North Dakota's beautiful. There's nothing there, but oh yeah.
I've never been.
It's an ocean of land. It's just rolling land. It's beautiful.
I thought that's not a flat prairie state.
It's close to it. It's like rolling. Part of it, there's some mountainy stuff, but
yeah, I feel like you're heading into the Montana mountainy rolling.
It leads into Montana, which builds up in the mountains. But yeah, a lot of North Dakota is like rolling hills.
I appreciate the geography.
Anyway, back to this young lady who she said she described herself in middle school as a wallflower and self-proclaimed nerd who came out of her shell in high school, was elected homecoming queen, student body president. Oh, and she happens to love robots. How awesome is that? And it's like, okay, sure.
MIT and robotics, though. That robotics is a big deal at MIT.
Well, but this was back in high school, I'm assuming.
Okay.
But I just, things like that makes me worried, and I don't think that I don't think that people are going to stop worrying about bullying and that kind of thing, but it makes me worried when you're like, oh, being bullied for being a nerd is dead, yay, when it isn't. And I hesitate to get into this topic about like fake nerds and like, oh, you're not a real nerd unless you blank or unless you like blank, because we shouldn't have qualifiers.
Well, that's going the opposite direction as well.
But we can't say that just because kids like video games more than they did before, that it's okay to like Dungeons and Dragons or cosplay or something like that.
I think overall the world is heading in a way that is more exclusive in the things that it should be more inclusive, mm-hmm. but part of the inclusivity is technology, which involves a lot of video games, animation, and it does learn a little bit more about the world around it. Mm. So there is, it's like you said about, racism is dead, and it wasn't. Yeah, definitely. Bullying because you're into Dungeons and Dragons is not dead.
Yeah.
It's not, but we're working to a point where people are being exposed to it in media or just happening upon. Critical Role has done wonders for the role-playing community because you put incredibly talented people in a room, let them be unafraid. Mm-hmm. And how scary is that to really put yourself out there, to be unafraid to say, hey, we are semi-successful or very successful voice actors. Mm-hmm. This is what we love to do. These are characters that we've been in love with before we ever did this show. Mm-hmm. And the community is huge. And they've said, because of you, I've went out and found a group to play this game with, and I've embraced it, and it's a thing I've always wanted to do. Or it's because of you, I got through a tough time, and I realized that I could retreat in this character that would allow me to be stronger to get through the times when I'm not. And there are, it's like the opening up of information when that's available to everyone. Anyone with a cell phone can look up any fact that they want and learn from it. Yeah. Granted, they won't. They'll just rely that the phone will always have the information. Right. I think that it's not. It's fair enough to say that these guys are part of the charge.
Yeah.
Are helping lead the pack when they're not just generating stuff for themselves. Their content is open, it's universal, and it's very inviting of anyone to watch it and not be afraid.
I applaud what they're doing. I reflect on the fact that, it's interesting you said that, being able to come out and be comfortable with who you are. And that's what we do here. We do a podcast, we stream online, we present ourselves to the world and celebrate our hobbies. And I'm just thinking about how long it took me to be comfortable to do that. And so you're looking at all these people who are our age or older who are learning to be comfortable to do that, but only after a lot of suffering, a lot of soul searching, a lot of difficulties hiding your hobby. Yeah, I think it's great, and I hope that they continue. I hope that there are more and more people who are leading this kind of charge, so that kids today in middle and high school don't have to go through what we did, don't have to wait till they're 30 to be able to accept that to be comfortable playing an RPG and not have to hide it.
Well, I imagine when we were kids, were girls playing Pog?
Pogs?
Were girls playing with Pogs?
Very briefly.
But women, girls, probably not as much.
No, not as much.
My niece and basically my nieces, who are all in their late single digits, early double digits, think Minecraft is cool.
All right.
The coolest. Like, you're playing a game where you're digging underground and making swords and finding horses. You're like, no, that's really cool. And it's because other YouTubers who have interesting personality play the game. Now, granted, they're watching the thing that's cool at the time and it's fashionable. Yeah. But if they want to play Minecraft and make swords, and if they want to be more what we used to call being a tomboy, that's okay. And they wouldn't have done it otherwise. They would have watched their Disney Channel, and they would have been the Hannah Montana. Yeah. They would have been, I'm a princess, or I'm a rock star, I'm a fashionista, and I'm not much more than that. And the boys are the ones who get to go and do the adventuring. Yeah. So I got to give credit to anyone who's trying to take a stand. And like you said, we're not there.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest takeaway from the article is, like I said, I applaud the Green Brothers for everything that they do. We need more people like that. But at the same time, we need to be vigilant and be as welcoming and as open as we possibly can be. And
if you're listening to this podcast and you have a child, do not remotely use the word bully.
Yeah.
Unless it's the true thing. And this could be a whole other topic for another time.
Oh, yeah, no.
It's just the word bully has become such a garbage trigger.
You know what? And even, again, this could be a whole other topic, but very briefly, even, do you think we do ourselves a disservice for using the word nerd? Should we just, we talk about, nerddom and nerdy topics. Should we just drop that? Should we just, especially with kids, if you go to a kid and you're like, oh, I should introduce you to some nerdy stuff I like. Should we just be like, hey, you want to play Minecraft? It's great.
To a degree.
Maybe we should,
no.
Drop more of that verbiage?
No, because the other nerds out there who need us, we have to have that beacon of some kind.
You do have to pride yourself and label yourself to a certain extent.
Well, there's a codification that we self-assign and that are assigned to us, and sometimes you own it and sometimes you don't. It's like even the name queer. Yeah. That was accepted for a time, that's our word, you can't use it. And then it's gone a bit more out of fashion, I think, in the last few years. Yeah. But so you, you take the words that are used to hurt you, shut up, nerd, and now you're nerd culture.
Yeah, we own that.
I own that. So so I could go to work and someone go, what do? Well, last night I was painting miniatures as I was streaming on Twitch. Tonight, I'm going to be recording a podcast to go on my website. It's all about nerd culture. I own it. It's my thing.
Yeah.
So I think words can be strong if you decide to embrace it for the right reasons. Alright, in this month's Table Topics, I wanted to discuss something that I think is pretty important. But I wanted to play a game with you really quickly to see how good you are at naming NPCs. To come up with your own name for an NPC.
Okay. I'm terrible at NPC names, by the way.
You just name him James.
Pretty much. Jim, John, James, Juber.
So I'm going to give you a description of a character,
an
NPC, and I want you to come up with a good name for that character that sort of fits their personality so that when we go back to that character, they kind of make sense, okay?
Sure. Okay.
Here's the first one.
All right.
The mayor of Trenton Harbor is cold and calculating. Born in a rusty old fishing village, they learn to be shrewd and cutthroat. Driven by coin and by favor, the mayor's coffers grow at the expense of the citizenry. What would be a good name for the mayor?
Fillion Gordon. No, Gorman.
Fillion Gorman?
Mayor Gorman.
Do I have the right to take these names and use them?
Sure. Go for it.
Because I kind of like that. Fillion Gorman. Let me go with a second one.
All right.
The druids strode out of the valley, flowers, robes and charms tussle by the breeze. They take their staff in hand and call upon the children of Mother Earth. The animals and trees bow to their will. The druid sings a song of healing across the fields as the greenery grows anew. Can you give me a name for the druid?
Aldaleth Goldflower.
Cool. Okay. So kind of elvish.
Yeah.
Not necessarily elvish, but A names are always kind of classy.
I'm thinking elvish. Aldaleth.
Goldflower.
Goldflower.
Okay.
Maybe Goldflower is the nickname that humans gave her.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the... Oh, that would be kind of cool. Again, I may steal these, just so you know.
Go for it.
Here's the last one. The barbarian leapt into the combat circle with muscles flexing and eyes alight with rage. The half-orc's blood runs hotter than most, and they can barely keep from swinging the great axe around in a furious arc. Green flesh bearing the scars of battles won and lost, this barbarian fights for honor as well as for fun.
Goldthor.
Some Goldflower and Goldthor.
Oh, that's
that
true.
That might be a good pair. They're friends. They're buddies. Okay. So I appreciate you playing along with me.
Okay.
And
what did I win?
And you won my respect.
Oh, that's not worth anything.
Yeah. I could probably get you a better prize than that later. Maybe I'll paint a mini for you.
Hey, I want to paint my own minis.
Yeah, you are pretty good at that. The reason I brought that up was multiculturalism in role-playing games.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that we necessarily put enough effort into it as game masters. Even as players to a lesser degree. Because let's face it, most of the role-playing games that we do, like Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons, tend to be based on medieval Europe.
Yeah.
Based on Caucasian societies.
Yeah, what we call Western culture.
Western culture. Patriarchal societies.
Yeah.
Where the king is in charge, the queen just sits there looking pretty on the throne. And it's okay to a degree, but to create richer, more lavish stories, and to tell you the truth, especially in the day that we live in now, it's our responsibility as a good game master, as if you are doing home brew for sure, to be aware that culture matters, and it's not all white people.
Yeah.
And part of it has to do with, and appreciate it, is defaultism. And we go back to what we know because we have a lack of definitions telling us otherwise.
Right, yeah.
If you tell me you are in the sands, the deserts, then your brain, as a privileged American, possibly male, will start to think, oh, well, that's going to be your Arabic type people with a slightly darker skin and
robes or long clothes. Yeah.
And that ends up being a little bit more than just because of the weather and the severity.
Right.
It becomes culturally based as well.
Right.
But I don't know if that's fair. And most of the games that we're playing are narratives based on race, ethnicity, and nation. The stories that we create, the humans versus the orcs. Okay, in this instance, the orcs are supposed to be more monstrous, and we're creating a us versus them, where your identity is based on who you are versus the others. It's called othering.
Right.
And that happens in racism all the time. Actual modern-day racism.
Yeah.
But, I mean, of course, this is a fantasy setting. The monsters have to be monsters so that the good guys can be good guys. Right. And you don't have to question it. But then there are times where you tell stories where the monsters are people too. And I think that is taking one step in the right direction. But I don't know. Most of the time when you're designing a character, if I say, who are you playing? You're going to tell me, well, he's a human.
Yeah.
And he's a ranger.
My favorite character is not a human that I've ever played. Okay. But yes.
But
I get what you're saying.
Whoever said they're human, they're a ranger, and they're lawful good.
Yeah.
So you've just told me their race, their class, and their alignment. Right. And that is what you told me about your character.
You didn't tell me their backstory.
You didn't tell me, he grew up in a very spiritual village. Right. And he was an acolyte for many years, and he's now going out into the world, and he's a very good-natured soul. Like, you're not telling me who the character is. I don't care what their hit points are. I want to know more about your character, but we're used to talking in ways in our RPGs that are so based on the meaningless part. But that also informs how we're still stuck, not necessarily embracing the cultural aspects.
There's a lot to unpack here.
There is a ton. and I thought about this on purpose because of... Here's how I've come to this decision. Okay. In my Pathfinder game, which is currently on hiatus, I hope it will continue again in the next few months.
Yeah, me too.
I introduced my first ever gay character.
Yeah.
He is an NPC that the players were already with for a while. They fought alongside him. They trusted him. And then all of a sudden they find out that he had wasn't necessarily a husband, but he had a
male partner.
A partner.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, the group went, oh, whoa. Like it was shocking, but not necessarily in a bad way. Like, oh, cool. Like, almost cool.
I remember that moment, and I was a player in that game. I reacted... My only reaction to that was really like... It was kind of like, I see what you did there kind of thing. It was like, and it was also it was like a nice, it was a nice, like, it was literally, because I remember it was, you were speaking as the NPC, and it was like me and my partner Jim or something. Yeah. It was literally like a single phrase, but it was like, nice little, like, add-on of a little bit of backstory.
Yeah.
A little bit of something unexpected in this case.
It was meant in the reveal to be unexpected.
Yeah.
But the character choice was unexpected for me because I built him to be a possible helper to the crew.
Yeah.
Because I knew some people might be leaving, and there was a little bit of a deficit in some skills that he could be there for. He could just also be... It's good to have friends.
Right.
And that's part of the Birthright campaign is it's more about politics, and eventually you're building alliances and building a kingdom.
And as just a quick aside, that's also, I think, a great way to build a world is that there are other people acting in this world that are on the level of the PCs, or maybe just below their level, but they're still it's not the PC show. It's the PCs are the main cast members, but there's other people doing stuff too. So it's a nice
good that not everybody is the shopkeeper.
Exactly. It's not just the people of the town. There's other adventurers. There's other warriors.
Yeah, that someone may have gone into that cavern just before you, or they may be coming up behind you. The king didn't just send you; he sent three different groups.
Hedging his bets.
He
on some hedge nights, huh?
Ooh, nice.
Ha!
He I didn't mean for him to be gay.
Yeah.
It just kind of felt right.
Yeah.
To tell, as I was telling the story, I knew he was worried about someone, and then there was someone that the party had already heard him talk about, who was supposed to be, a friend. I've got someone.
It was like, that's his war buddy.
That's his war buddy.
And it was a subversion of that. Oh no, it's actually his partner. Yeah, I mean, even just that speaks to the whole topic you're talking about, where where revealing that a warrior character is gay is somehow unexpected, not shocking. Because I don't think anybody was like, "Oh my god, I can't." It was like, but nice character moment. But it was that speaks to what you're talking about, that in our society, even that is unexpected, and it probably shouldn't be, but it is.
And I think it's okay that if you're exploring that it is a little bit of a surprise, and I meant it for it to be kind of a surprise. They go, the person that you were talking to was the person who was your mate, or the person who's your partner, and it could have been a boy or a girl. That didn't really matter, and it reminded me of, and this is something in college. One of my first friends who was openly gay, he was a man's man. He was a total dude. He loved contact sports like lacrosse and rugby.
Yeah. And
he spoke as any other heteronormative guy that I knew, and it was just, that was part of who he was. And so at no point, it was interesting for me to kind of realize maybe, or see in action that people are just people no matter what.
It reminds me, actually, I'm laughing because I just watched it the other night, a skit from that show Portlandia.
Yeah.
Where the couple's like, my brother's coming over and he's gay and he's bringing his boyfriend. And they're like, it's going to be great. He's going to help us, design our living room and do all this decorating.
Yeah.
And then he shows up and he's like, "What's up, guys? Yeah, let me." And he's like this loudmouth jock slob, and they're really disappointed. And it's a cute little subversion of that, but it's kind of the same thing where it's like there are those stereotypes that exist in our society, and you're surprised when they're subverted, but they shouldn't. You shouldn't be.
I think, and so of course that is a different type of, I wouldn't necessarily say cultural, but that is a person with a different identity than you normally see, as opposed to being a lascivious gay character.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that's necessarily fair to do. You can have lascivious characters and have one that is gay.
Yeah, a gay character doesn't have to be a Dr. Smith style mincing fop. They can be. Yes.
And I think having that character, because at first the party was still kind of suspicious of him, always kept him a little at distance. They thought that maybe I introduced him to the party to be a foil of some kind. But he had proved over time that he was very trustworthy. Then when they figured out that he's got something to lose, and eventually he sent his lover away. Said, "You cannot be here at this time because stuff's going down. You need to get safe." He had to make some sort of sacrifice. I can't really see you anymore because we're in an area that's very dangerous.
Too much danger, and I care about you.
I care about you, so I just got you relocated to a different town. And I did that very specifically so that this character had something to lose, and now he has nothing to lose. He knows that his assets are safe. He can go full bore if he needs to.
Right.
That was a fun choice for me. And another one, almost similar, still not quite all the way there. I decided to have a character who, and I did this one on purpose. I wanted the players to run into someone who was an NPC who was going to be completely inflexible to them, but that they couldn't bully. And so I gave them a stutter. And I had gone through some character quirks, and one of them was a stutterer. So they come into this shop, and they've got all this money they want to spend, and they got some potions they want to stock up on. And so they're like, how about you give us all this for this much gold? And it's like, no, that's not a fair price. I will give you only the appropriate price. I tried to go gentle on Stutter. It wasn't used for comedic effect at all.
Yeah.
Let me be fair. Or hopefully fair. And it disarmed the whole party.
Yeah.
What normally they would have been like trying to like shill and get every nickel and dime, they finally came a person they kind of pitied. And I didn't use it against them in that way, but I did that purposely so they would do honest business with somebody and have to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting idea, that giving, even, it doesn't have to be something like even a start, but giving a character, an NPC, a couple of little human traits is going to make the player view them as a person rather than an object. Because it's too often the shopkeeper is a vending machine that you go up and you put money in and potions come out. Adding a couple little, you walk in and he's carving a little doll for his daughter who's there next to him. And you're not going to want to haggle as much or you're not going to want to intimidate him when his daughter is there next to him, although some players might. Right. But that's a really good idea there of just like adding that little bit of humanity to disarm, like I said, disarm the party. And
that was on purpose. And so that comes into identity a bit, which, of course, going kind of away from the multiculturalism aspect a little bit. But I realized through experimentation, and of course this is in the entirety of Birthright, in that world, where that group is based more on medieval Europe and patriarchal, Caucasian type people. And so it's kind of okay. In the other lands you can go to, they're based off of more Nordic or more Asian influenced or more Russian influenced or more Arabic influenced and more African influenced, and that's pretty cool. But it's still coming out of the 1980s, early 1990s, when they're exploring cultures, but they're not necessarily exploring letting it be looser and freer than what we already still kind of consider to be stereotypes. All the Arabic type people have very Arabic names, and they carry scimitars, and they're wearing robes and big turbans on their heads, and so it's taking a step in the right direction, but it's still really far away. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the historical kind of where we're coming from with this, and you look at Tolkien as being kind of the originator of most of what we look at as modern fantasy. What you got there? Sweet tarts? Sweet tarts. Sweet tarts? No, I'm good. Thank you. They're for sharing. I'm going to have a cheese straw, though. Okay. But, yeah, so, I mean, there are problems with Tolkien. I mean, one of the common criticisms, especially the films, I guess they addressed it a little bit in the films, but Tolkien has a severe lack of female characters in his books. But I'm thinking more along the lines of, you were talking about... at the start of this, you had me name a half-orc. I'm just thinking about Tolkien had orcs as a stand-in for, like you said earlier, the otherism. Yes. This, evil, dark... Now, he also had, humans from what would be his equivalent of the deepest, darkest Africa. This Victorian ideal of wild men. And who were those people again? The Southerners and the Easterners, the guys riding the elephants in the movie. Oh, yeah, okay. Haradrim. Yeah, Haradrim. Sorry, took me a second to remember that. But Tolkien had that, but then he also created co-opted, I guess is a better phrase, these orcs as this otherish culture of brutish, evil humanoid. So it's kind of one of the problematic things to think about with Tolkien and fantasy is, are we using these orcs as a stand-in for cultures we don't like, or by the other token, Tolkien, are we using them because there isn't because
we need an evil being. We need something pure evil. And we know that humans aren't pure evil. I
know a few that might be, but yeah.
Like I said, I'm just kind of thinking back to the historical aspect to begin with there. But yeah, gosh, sorry. There's a lot for me to think about on this topic.
Well, I did that on purpose because this is something that there's no perfect answer.
No,
but it's something that I think really needs to be incorporated better.
I think
and considered even more so as a player too.
Absolutely, yeah. We're sitting here having this conversation, and I'm going to say up front that neither of us as cultural scholars. We're saying what we can. We're trying to be better, and if you're listening to this, you want to make comments and suggestions. We welcome that kind of. We want more input on this kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, we do our best to be open and to think more about this. Well, I think I actually had a discussion briefly on Twitter with somebody about this a few days ago, where they were asking, is it okay or is it acceptable for players to use accents with their characters? Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, as long as it's respectfully done. I do this all the time. Well, not all the time, but I've done this with some characters. Like my dwarf character in your game, when I'm doing the voice, which I don't always do because I'm lazy, I'm going to do kind of a Scottish accent, the Tolkien movie dwarf accent. So I think you run into more problems when your character maybe has darker skin and the player starts doing an Arabic or an African sort of sounding voice. You're starting to get into some scary territory there about stereotyping and racism. But at the same time, I mean, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, as long as it's done respectfully, to try and get into the mind of a character that is different than you are, and if the voice helps with that,
exactly,
that's not a bad thing.
Well, you're not saying I'm Scottish dwarf. You're saying
my character.
This is the voice that my dwarf has.
Exactly.
You could use that same accent and say, I am this warrior from the northern shore, and that is the accent they have.
I mentioned it briefly earlier. My absolute favorite character I've ever made that I desperately want to play again in something is a rat folk. And in my mind, his voice is a really nice, light Irish lilt. He has an Irish accent.
You didn't really use that lilt.
I really didn't in the game because
the group
various reasons. But that's kind of how I imagine that character, and that's unusual, I think. Mm-hmm. You don't think of a rat as having a kind of a soft Irish little lilty voice, like sing-song kind of voice. But he did, because he's sort of a
now that you say that, I can almost hear him talking to my character, be like, what are you going to do with that gold lad?
He is Sir Trinket. Sir Trinket Greymold, Knight of the Brownwater.
Yes, yeah.
That's how he sounds. It's sing-song and light. And that was just something fun that I thought spoke to the character. So, when I play a dwarf, I do the Scottish, I'm a dwarf, because that's what you do with a dwarf. But, I don't think there's necessarily any harm in that. And I think even going beyond that, I'll say this. I don't, and again, I try and be as open-minded and as forward-thinking as I possibly can, within reason. I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with, and forgive me for using the word, but stereotyping.
Yeah.
Because, okay, if you want to set a fantasy game in a Western European sort of setting, it's okay to have Western European sort of standards. It's okay, because historically in Western Europe, being homosexual was pretty much not accepted, or at least we think it was. The scholarship on this, I don't know, I haven't gone into. Maybe it was more accepted than we know, but we assume that it wasn't. So in a game, is it maybe it's a little okay? I shouldn't say that. It's not okay. You shouldn't use a game as a way to rag on other people or other cultures, saying that, like,
it's a game like this. A game like this is a safe zone. It should be. Yeah. If you're playing it and you feel safe, it should be a place where everyone feels okay to explore that, though. Yeah. Well, so you might want to play a game where if a character is blah blah, a character has a different color of skin or different look, and they come from a certain land, maybe there can be bigotry against them more than just being the half orc and we don't trust orcs.
Yeah, you have to be careful with that kind of thing. But what I would say is this: you shouldn't go into a game that's set in a Western European medieval setting and complain that there's not enough homosexual people, there's not enough dark-skinned people. I don't think it's fair to complain because you see this a lot in modern society. You say, "Oh well, there's not enough black people on TV." I think that's a perfectly fair criticism. That's
right.
True. There's not,
right,
and there should be more. There
right.
should be more representation. It's not fair to say your game set in a medieval setting in Western Europe doesn't have enough black people in it.
I understand, but I disagree.
Do you know what I mean? Because historically there weren't, so it's okay. It's
right.
It's not valid to complain about. It's okay if you want to introduce that because that's interesting.
If you're playing a game set in medieval Europe,
yeah,
yes. If you're saying a game based on medieval Europe type setting,
fair enough. If you're in a fantasy setting, anything goes.
Anything goes. And part of the reason that minorities and certain ethnicities are not known or do not play. Mm-hmm. Is because there's nothing no for them that represents something they might find more to their identity that isn't considered an other or a negative in some way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're right about that.
And there are studies done for 20, 30 years on this. Yeah. If I am a young African-American youth, I have no desire to start playing Dungeons & Dragons. Why? Because the characters are all white, and the characters are all highborn. Yeah. They're not necessarily the person that I can necessarily relate to. Yeah. Then maybe, and I'm generalizing there as well, but studies have shown that for years and years. Yeah. And I'd like to comment on how certain MMORPGs have tried to address that. Not perfectly. The first one that I can think of very directly was EverQuest. Did you get to play EverQuest?
I never played EverQuest.
EverQuest had this normal sort of contingent. Is that the right word? I don't know if it is. They had the normal races that you could pick from.
Sure,
do you want to be a dwarf? Do you want to be an elf?
Fantasy, yeah.
They had the erudites. Mm-hmm. This was the black race. Yeah. And I'm dumbing it down.
Sure.
But instead of having them be the warrior race, they were the most intellectual. They were the most magically based. Yeah. They were very much us versus them. They were the ones who thought, if you're not an erudite and you're not as smart as we are, you are lesser than us.
That's one thing I just laughed because it reminded me, one of the things that I absolutely hate, I love the setting overall, Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
I love that setting, love that world. One of the things that I hate most about it is that there's a race called Redguard, who are generally considered in all the games to be the best natural warriors. They have better stamina, more strength, etc., and they're all black. And it's like... and it's explained in the lore why, but it's still, it rings really awkwardly.
Well, part of that is when you give the strength to the group that might be perceived to have some stigma against them, are you not doing the same thing? Like, they're the strongest and the best warriors because they're black? What are you trying to say?
Exactly, yeah.
The erudites... they're the smartest and they're the best. Are you doing that because
they're black and you're trying to make... Yeah. A great example, actually, going from EverQuest, I didn't play EverQuest because I was playing at the time Asheron's Call, which was the other lesser-known MMO that I think was probably the best online experience I've ever had in any game ever, even to this day.
Sweet.
And there were 3 races that you could play as, and one were the Nords, and they were the northern blonde guys. And one were the oh god, I can't remember. But there was like the Asian race but then there was the Middle Eastern race. Mm-hmm. But they did this too a little bit, where the Nord race were like the best with sword and shield. the Asian race were the best with their fists, like martial arts.
What?
And the Middle Eastern race were the magical people.
Right.
Who were mystical and mysterious. So it's like, even, I appreciated at the time, because I always played characters that were of the Middle Eastern section, because I liked their towns. It was really cool and different. But looking back, it's like, it's kind of, they're filing into those little stereotypes because, I don't know, for whatever reason.
Well, you got to be careful that anything that you categorize, and this gets back into the ludology versus narratology. Even games like Magic the Gathering have cultural bias based on class to a degree. I mean, culture is a different word there, but you have your black cards, your red cards, your green cards, and that all starts to segment in abilities. Yeah. And then certain games like that will penalize you for going outside of your abilities or outside. And then there are some that will give you a benefit, but there's profit and loss, and so you have to do cost-benefit analysis of, is it worth it to do cards that are outside of my home class that gives me a better diversity, but I lose overall strength? And so it's weird that all these games do have some sort of bonuses depending on who you pick, and it ends up still being based on ethnicity instead of based on the name of a tribe. Right. Or the something else. It's still because you come from the north, you fight with a sword and shield. Yeah, I mean, we're going off of what we know. We're going off of what we've been taught or what we've seen in history books. Right, and you can begin to shift perspective away, even a little bit. I think you as a game master are doing a good job, and this is a thing that I realize in my game. If you run across an NPC, in my head, 99 times out of 100, they're white. In the birthright setting in particular, because that's kind of where they are. Yeah. They're usually human. I'm not thinking they're going to be more monstrous, because in this setting, the more monstrous you are, probably the more evil you are. Yeah. So I have to find ways to augment it just enough that you're running into more than necessarily just human, just elf or half-elf or dwarf.
Makes me think that was one of the great advantages of running a game in the Star Wars setting, was that it's inherently multicultural. Yeah, so you can just do whatever the heck you want with any character. That was a lot of fun.
Was Roz human?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. She's one of my favorite NPCs you ever run, because she was a total...
Anyway.
Yeah, she's probably just one of my favorite NPCs that you came up with.
Yeah, That was the nice thing about that setting, was there weren't really that many expectations to this end that you get in something like Birthright. But I'm just thinking back also about another character that I created for another game that was set in a very similar, Western European medieval sort of setting. You were talking about how typically when you create a character, especially as a player, you usually start with what's the class, what's the race. I'm thinking back to one of my second favorite character I've ever played, Jovar, my cleric.
Love Jovar.
The way that he was designed, I did start with class only because I knew to begin with I was going to be a cleric in that game. But once I said, okay, cleric, I designed that character with a backstory first. And that's what I would say. The best way to kind of get around this idea, get around these problems that we're talking about, is start there. I started with that character as, how interesting would it be? Basically, he was for lack of a better phraseology, he was a reformed frat boy.
I never knew that.
he was basically like this rich, dumb kid who did stupid things because he thought he could get away with it, and he screwed up, and he got in a bunch of trouble, got sent away to the monastery. So I started by creating this character with this unique perspective that developed and changed, and then from that built out his abilities and understood how he would react in the world. So I think as a player and also as a GM, when it comes time to have a character, that's where you need to start with, and it goes back to what you're saying about your shopkeeper example, you need to start with creating a character who has human elements, who has an understandable, believable backstory. And then on top of that, you can build on the class and the race and the sex and worry about all that stuff.
Well, I'd like to give a little bit of my personal advice to, first, the player. of a general role playing game is what you were definitely touching on first. Not starting with the class.
Yeah.
Ignore the class. Maybe you want to play those components. In the back of your head, I want to use the cleric template as what that person could do.
Yeah. You can start with saying, I want this character to be kind of a roguey, sort of in the shadows kind of, he's going to be a rogue.
Yeah, you know what maybe their strengths are going to be, but the character itself, you should eliminate the word for your class.
Yeah.
I don't even think... I mean, Jovar was a cleric because that was his job.
Jovar was a monk.
Jovar was a monk?
But not a class-wise. Class-wise.
That's the point.
He was a monk from a monastery.
I don't remember... Well, you said monastery, but he was never really referred to as a monk.
He was Brother Jovar.
Right.
He would call himself a monk.
Yeah.
He was a brother of a monastery. So in his mind, the word cleric would never even come up. He wasn't a cleric. That was just his class used to describe his abilities. And that, like you said, that's the key. That's the way to start with a character.
For me, Chief, the Warforged, he was not a fighter.
Yeah, right.
He was a Warforged. Because to him, his identity was, I am Chief. I am protecting this crew.
He was the security chief.
I am the security chief.
Yeah.
That's where he got his name.
Yeah.
Security chief. And at the lowest level, the least important, but at the end of where his identity concluded was, I am also Warforged. And Captain Collins, he wasn't a swashbuckler class.
Right.
He was a merchant first, a sailor second, captain third, and then he just happened to be a swashbuckler with his ability set.
And again, my rat folk trinket, he describes himself as a knight.
Yeah, he was a knight.
He was a knight and a nobleman of his people. Class-wise, he was a rogue. He was a dervish, actually.
Yeah.
But in his mind, he is a knight. He would be a fighter. He's a warrior. He's an honorable, very unhonorable, but he was an honorable
to himself.
In the context of his culture. That's why I love bringing up that character in the context of this conversation, because he was designed, that was a really fun experiment to me, because I basically built up his race and his culture in my mind as to how they existed and what their cultural norms were.
Yeah.
And then played a character to fit those. So he came across to the rest of the party as this untrustworthy rogue thief, but in his mind, he wasn't. He was living up to the norms of the culture that he grew up in, that didn't value personal property in any way, had no value for life in the long term because none of them lived more than a couple of years. Yeah. It was really fun to create that. What would a character who grew up in this alien to us culture, how would they see the world and how would they act?
Side question. Your characters and my characters tend to get along really well. Partly because we get along really well.
We're just friends in real life, yeah.
But we almost played brothers who were going to fight all the time.
Yeah.
Which would have been fun. But
yeah, that would.
Interestingly enough, your monk/cleric and my uneducated, kind of a lust for adventure gunslinger. Although I never wanted to call him a gunslinger, but in that group you tend to get called what your class was.
Yeah.
He was just this farm boy. Yeah. He didn't know what he was. If it wasn't for the archaeologist friend, he wouldn't have known anything. He would still been living in ditches.
Yeah.
Happened to have had a gun and to protect himself. Why do you think it was that Trinket got along okay with Chief? Because Chief was the complete opposite.
I think it was, again...
Because Chief had no property.
It was their cultural background, again, that neither of them had any value on personal property, and neither of them had any value on life, as it were. Warforged was... they're alive, but only sort of, kind of.
It was almost eternally, and it's like so.
Yeah, it's a very they both had very unhuman views of concepts, and I think that's why they were compatible in a strange way, where it was like, Chief didn't mind if Trinket stole stuff because he's like, all right, whatever. As long as you're not
you
hurting
are the
people,
quartermaster of the ship.
You're allowed to take that stuff.
You can requisition
it. In Trinket's mind,
want.
it's like, well, they're not using it, so I'm going to use it now.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty and shiny, so I'm going to put it in my cabin.
I don't know. Sometimes I just think about how our characters could separate away from the rest of the whole party and still go on some of the most fun adventures, just because they seem to like, okay, whatever crazy thing is you want to do, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, no, yeah.
There was very little arguments.
They were both sort of along for the ride.
There's only one issue we ever ran into, but that's a story for another time. Yeah. Which you're still mad at me for. Yeah. Gunslingers know how to blow the hell out of a tile floor.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went too deep there. So the other thing that I would suggest, and this is tricky, but for a player who's looking to maybe not necessarily overcome a lack of culture, but to embrace it in different ways, is to consider an ethnicity choice behind what's stereotypical, but do it very subtly. And by that, I mean, pick what a lot of us might consider to be a stereotype, but really, really soften what that means. Or try to take a step in a little bit of a different direction. So, what is your skin color?
Yeah.
That's just what your skin color is. Does that matter to you in the village you grew up in or the city you grew up in? Are you different than most? Are you normal? That might be something you might want to think about. But go beyond that. This isn't the one color part of town, the other color part of town. Now, when you get into something like Dragonborn, where chromatic colors really matter, then what does that mean to your personality based on that? If you are a red Dragonborn, maybe you're the exact opposite of what a red dragon is supposed to be. Maybe you are much softer and kinder, and maybe you're on some other path than a normal red Dragonborn might be. I'd also suggest what your adornment would be. So, what does your culture mean when it comes to tattoos or piercings? And I think of particularly the Bajorans from Star Trek.
Yeah, with the earpiece.
Yeah, like the ear jewelry was very important to their culture. They're basically just humans with an extra dumb ridge on their nose, but they had the piece of jewelry, which that's what signified to me more than any prosthetics on the face. They're a Bajoran, and that there's a pride there that a character could have that where all the people of this culture wear some sort of wrist bracelet that has some spiritual connection. Or tattoos are kind of an obvious one. I think of the Centauri from Babylon 5, and just the way they do their hair.
Their hair and the clothing, like the big...
It's just ornate. They're basically human with a tail and cat teeth. But they're human. But they are this aristocracy where the more coiffed they are, the higher born they are. And you could still be in the warrior class and still have some funky cool hair or some weird shape of hair. And the women are like half bald except for it's like a ponytail in the back or something.
Yeah, they were fully bald, but then they had the ponytail, right?
But that's their style of beauty.
Right.
For women. That's a cultural decision more than it is being an alien race.
I don't know. I think overall the most important thing in my mind is, don't be afraid to play something different, but also don't be afraid to play something that you're comfortable with.
For yourself.
If you want to play a character that's a lot like you, and that helps you play that character better, that's fine. If you want to play something that's totally opposite of you, culture-wise, whatever, that's okay too. As long as you're doing it from a perspective of respect and of like understanding, as long as you're, if you're coming into it like, oh, I'm going to play a gay character because that's different than what I am. Well, that's maybe not the best reason to do that, but if you want to explore a different aspect and you're going to, understand more about the culture, if it's going to make sense in the context of the game and you're going to treat it with respect and you're going to learn, if you think it's going to help you grow as a person, that's a good reason to play a character that's different.
Very much so. And I would feel very comfortable playing His name's Adric. You remember Adric?
Yes, yeah.
And I just called him he's a woodsman. He carries an axe. So what his class is didn't matter. Mm-hmm. It's his profession.
Right.
And I think when you're building a character, maybe to choose something like a profession or the role in which they provided their town or their family is more important than being the ranger or whatever.
Right.
And if I would be comfortable playing him, and part of who he is that he's gay, that doesn't change who he is.
Right.
Because that doesn't change what a person is. Right. Who they're interested in sexually or emotionally. Mm-hmm. That doesn't change who he is as that character.
But by the same token, I have a problem with actually tokenism, I guess we'll call it. Yes. I have a problem with saying, I'm going to make this character gay just so I have a gay character. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to affect anything about him, he's just gay. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, you should feel like, oh, well, just because of his sexual orientation, that doesn't necessarily make him this or this. I agree. But at the same time, you need to have a reason to make certain decisions beyond just, I feel like making this character black for some reason.
Yeah. And that was something that I struggled with on another NPC. Mm-hmm. I wanted there to be a little guy who was helping them out because they never thought to buy horses and deal with that. So they keep walking from town to town, and it takes them forever. And I'm going to start to nickel and dime them every time they have to stop at a place, and it's going to start costing more and more money until they figure out, you might want to figure out your transportation issues. So they got the favor of the Count, and he gave them a page who is good with horses and training to be a squire one day and a knight one day. Just kind of a boy of all about 14, 15 years old, a little inexperienced but high-spirited. I regret that I didn't have a chance to play with his ethnicity there. Yeah. I looked back on it and thought I would actually rather him have been darker skinned, so that maybe he stood out a little bit more in a couple areas where the town was maybe more of one family or another. He got to go into the elven village, and the elves are all much more fair-skinned, so this could be the first human of the darker color skin that they had seen in a while, and maybe the other elves would have been like interested, like, oh, what is, like, we know that you're just a human, but hey, you're kind of novel here. And play with that a little bit and see what the other players did. I kind of regret that I didn't open that opportunity up, but that was never my intention in the first place, and I'm glad I didn't make a decision based purely on that.
Right, yeah, I mean, you have to be careful if you're like, oh, it's going to be interesting to... Yeah, you have to be careful to make a decision like that, but as long as it's coming from a position of understanding and wanting to grow more and to learn more and to be respectful of things, and because specifically that example, you run into a lot of danger of saying, oh, well, you're going to have a young black boy serving the party. Like, that's a really uncomfortable place to go. But if if you're like, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to put these players in this position to face up to this and address this trope and deal with the stereotype. That's not necessarily a bad decision to make, but you have to be careful, you have to be judicious, and you need to be respectful.
What do you think, as a game master, is a way that someone could more earnestly make an effort to pay attention to cultural expectations, diversity?
I will say this, first of all, you need to make sure that your group can handle it. And be comfortable with it. If you're playing with certain groups and you start throwing curveballs at them, like, here's a minority character, here's a whatever, this character's transsexual, there are a lot of players that aren't going to be comfortable with that, aren't going to be able to deal with that, are going to react in really negative ways that might derail your campaign. That's why I'm afraid of the idea of tokenism, because it's an easy way to derail everything and just make the focus on this special character that you made instead of your story you're trying to tell.
Right.
But that being said...
imagine that you have the trust in your party, and your players have trust in you.
If your party is... You know they're going to be okay with it, you know they're going to deal with it, and you know it's going to be a challenge to them in a kind of a cerebral way. It's not a bad thing. You know, we talk a lot about, you know, challenging players in terms of character level, and is this encounter too difficult, you know, dice-wise, and, you know, we don't talk enough about, is this challenging to my players from a role-playing perspective?
Yes.
Is this challenging to make them think outside of the box? But, yeah, you just have to be careful with it. I mean, if they're in a Tolkien-esque setting and you start trying to throw gay characters at them, that's not really going to fit the setting necessarily, and it's going to be jarring for the player, and it might throw them off a little bit. But if you're creating a world where there's a lot of openness, a lot of movement of cultures and that kind of thing, that's the difficulty you have with medieval sort of, with Dungeons and Dragons, with Pathfinder. It's a medieval setting. There's not airlines. There's not a lot of movement of people between places. So, you know, the idea of movement of culture is really, you know, difficult to address. But if you're in a situation, say you're playing a modern D20 game or something, or a Star Wars game, great place to, you know, maybe throw some curveballs, introduce some things that make sense in the world. As long as it makes sense in the world and you're in a smart, respectful way, and you trust your players, I think go for it. If you want to try something new, it's a great way to like I said, challenge your players and make a memorable night.
I think part of it has to be, you need to be able to improv in the moment, but ask yourself a couple very insightful questions about where you are and why you're there. For example, the players walk into this harbor town. There is a ton of commerce, trade, and travel. This is a place where you would want to introduce a bevy of different colors, shapes, and sizes when it comes to physicality, as well as creeds and cultural beliefs, different temples, people who are speaking in funny languages that, oh yeah, I have a high intelligence modifier, I know all these. You don't know that one. And your characters will stop for a minute and go, I don't know what you're speaking. Maybe they'll pay more attention, and then you describe this person wearing exotic in quotation marks for that area. They're wearing this and that and the other, and you don't want to go too on the nose as a token, but there are opportunities that you need to realize. If you're in the same port town and everybody's white and everybody's plain, and the rich look rich and the poor look poor, you're missing an opportunity to explore this world.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It goes the opposite way, too. If you're playing a game in a medieval Western-style setting, and like you said, you go to a port town, or they travel across the sea to a mysterious island, and they get there and it's all Arthurian knights and stuff still.
Sure.
And I think a lot of players are going to notice that, and it's going to fall flat for them, too. It's like, I thought this was going to be the cantina in Star Wars, and instead it's the same bar that we were in when we met.
The Dancing Pony. What was that in the
Prancing Pony.
Prancing Pony?
Yeah, exactly. We're back in Bree instead of in the cantina, so yeah.
A lot of multiculturalism should extend, although it rarely does, beyond race. But you need to be willing to decide that race matters in this area. If you are from this area, or if in the birthright setting in particular, a lot of times the people of darker skin may come from this other country. You can say, no, actually, my family may have come from there 5 generations ago, but we've been running this farmstead here for over 100 years. Actually, we're the only family that's been in this town the longest that still has living members. And you can build off of that, and it becomes a very interesting, but also it kind of normalizes itself back into the setting of your campaign when the book closes before you open it again. And then every time you open the book and close the book between sessions, you can normalize the thing that maybe the previous time you encountered it seemed a little unusual.
Yeah. It's an interesting topic, and we could talk all night about it. I do want to say before we close out on this topic, just I hope you enjoyed listening to it. If you've got some comments or things you want to add to this, we'd love to hear more. We're open to anything, and also I guess I'd say advanced apologies just in case, because we use certain verbiage tonight, or if we touched on topics that may be difficult for you. We meant absolutely no disrespect or harm in any way. I mean, whenever you touch on these sorts of subjects, it can be touchy.
And we could inadvertently say something in a way that we didn't mean to.
Yeah. And
I even find this out when I think I'm speaking the right words, and I realize that I'm using some code words I didn't know that could still be considered offensive or insensitive or maybe just not correct. So
I hope we didn't do any of that, but if we did, we apologize. And
I think we're probably okay, because at least we're admitting we don't know everything, but we're really willing to explore, and we hope that you do too in your role-playing settings in the future.
Yeah, that's the right attitude to have. Cyrus, I wanted to bring up a video that I was actually watching, I guess it was yesterday and today. Just released our good buddy, personal friend, James Rolfe. Now, I'm joking, we don't know James Rolfe at all, but
I watched this video too. I was watching it today.
The Power Rangers thing?
Power Rangers
okay. So I was watching this video, and it made me think, James Rolfe just did a video.
Good friend of the show.
Good friend of the show. No, we're kidding again. We don't know James Rolfe. Would love to. He seems like a super nice guy.
How's this? He may not be my friend, but I'm his friend.
We know him. We know him through his videos.
If that's true, I've known him longer than some of my other nerd friends.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's a mark of a good content creator is that you feel like you know him.
I do feel like I know him.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, he did a video just recently here about Power Rangers. Yes. Talking about how he never watched Power Rangers growing up, and he decided to go back and watch the show, and then got really mad at himself that he didn't watch it as a kid because he was a big Godzilla fan, and that's really, Super Sentai and kaiju fighting and everything. That's what Power Rangers is. So it got me to thinking: are there any fandoms you can think of that you missed the boat on, you missed out on, that you regret, that you wish you could go back and watch or experience?
There are probably a couple, and I'm sure you've got a couple in the back of your mind too. And it's funny that when we were coming up with a couple things for this, I thought of Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Because of that video, but I never put together that's where...
that was the inspiration
That's the inspiration for it.
Yeah.
But truthfully, Power Rangers is one where I have watched, I'd say maybe half of the incarnations. And again, not all the way through, but at least a good amount of about half of the incarnations. And thought, why isn't this more popular? Cool special effects, monster fighting, sometimes good-looking cast, sometimes decent acting cast, and then telling an epic story that every season can still raise the bar and be unique in its own way.
Yeah, the show got interesting. Yeah.
It got really interesting. Yeah. I think SPD is about the time it stopped being... that was the pinnacle for me because it was a police force and it introduced lots of monsters, but then it just kept going downhill, and that also had to do with the way it was filmed and the way it changed hands and what they were able to produce with the Sentai footage and what they were trying to accomplish. This most recent season, from the limited amount I've been able to see, it's just hard to watch. It really is. But I wish that Power Rangers was treated with a little more love than it was in the earliest seasons. A little less about making the toys and more about translating the story from the Super Sentai footage. But it was also it wasn't just a toy. It wasn't a good episode that I can associate with my earliest memories of the first few seasons. Terrible movies. And a limited show that I think, with a little more love, it could have been the next big franchise.
I mean, it was
that's beloved.
It was a big franchise, I think, and I see a lot.
It's profitable.
You complain about it's kind of selling toys, and it was, but you look at Transformers or G.I. Joe, and it was the exact same.
Yeah, but that had
designed to sell stories.
That was more built off of the entirety of the franchise and the comic books and the cartoons were the commercials.
I think back
so they had to tell a better story.
The Transformers movie and the G.I. Joe movie, that both of them I loved to death. And
you didn't love the Power Rangers movie?
I never saw the Power Rangers movie.
You don't?
No, the Power Rangers I was getting older when they kind of got popular, and I still watched it a little bit, the first couple of seasons, but I was never all that into it, as much as some other people were. I don't know. What any other fandoms that jump to mind that you wish you missed the boat on, you wish you didn't?
I missed the boat on Pokemon.
Really, yeah.
I was just a little too old to get into it when it began.
I would say, for me, Pokemon cards specifically. I played the games when they first came out, even in high school, and I loved them to death. I feel like I experienced the games fine, but the collectible card game and collecting those cards, I was too old for.
I don't think I ever bought any of the games that weren't used.
Really?
I may have bought Soul Silver, or whatever Silver, because I didn't have a Game Boy of my own. I had a Game Gear at one point. I never had a Game Boy until I joined the Marines.
Yeah.
And I had these weird work duties where I had all this time with nothing else to do. And, listening to the radio, that was going on. I'm just sitting there and I'm working all by myself. I was like, I need something to do for the next 45 minutes. For the next 2 hours. There's nothing else to do. I'll get in trouble if I'm anywhere but here. So I bought a Game Boy.
Yeah.
The Game Boy Color. It was actually a silver and gold Pokemon edition. So I bought Pokemon Silver.
Actually, that was the first Game Boy I owned because I had Game Gear as well. I was from Sega household.
Yeah.
The first Game Boy I had was Game Boy Color, and one of the first games I had was Pokemon Red.
Okay.
So I played it. But the card game, like I said, I wasn't a part of, and kind of wished I had been young enough to really enjoy that. For me, one series that jumps out that I regret not getting into, but I don't really have any excuse at this point, is Firefly. I've never seen... I've seen
wait,
a quarter of an episode of Firefly.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why?
And there's no excuse because it's a season long. I should be able to watch it, right? I don't ever want to watch Firefly because it has been so hyped up and built up by everyone else in the nerd community that if I go watch it and I don't like it, I'll be a pariah forever.
One, I think there's no way you won't like it. But then again, that inflates it even more.
Exactly.
Let me tell you how I got into it. It had already gone on to Fox.
Yeah.
Failed miserably because of Fox.
Yeah. Yeah, it was their fault. Yeah.
Already come off the air, and there was a groundswell of people going, "This is amazing, you should watch it. This is amazing, you should watch it." And I didn't have a good computer. I was moving between homes, between college years, and by myself in my stepdad's condo, I'm just chilling, and on Sci-Fi, they're just doing a marathon of it because whatever. I've got nothing else to do. I just went and ordered Chinese food from up the street. I'm just gonna... Holy crap, this is funny.
Yeah.
This is really good. And I watched about 5 or 6 episodes straight, what they had to air, or what I hadn't already seen. And then, it might have been a month later, I saw the DVD of the season.
Yeah.
Bought it, watched it all from the very beginning, all the way through, and realized I had missed it. I missed it originally airing, but I was still in the era of before the movie had come together, before it became so... You said pariah, but I'm thinking more... It hadn't been sacrificed on the altar of Joss Whedon.
The grand nerd messiah.
No. Yeah, there was no messianic concerns at that point. I think a lazy Sunday, you're all by yourself, it's raining, you got some good grub and some beers, I'm going to watch episodes 1, 2, and 3. But go ahead and decide that that's it. I'm just going to watch the first 3 episodes. I'm like, okay, that was really good. You'll turn off your TV. You're going to stream on 9 to 5 Gamer for an hour or 2, and then you're going to go, I'm going to watch another episode before I go to bed.
Yeah.
And that'll be it. He'll already be 2/3 of the way through.
No, that's true. I mean, that's like I said. There's no excuse because I could watch it in a day and finish the whole thing.
It is probably the most capable cast ever put together, where everybody's that lovable villain type to a degree. Maybe not a lot, or maybe a lot, but it works so well that it's just enjoyable, and you can take it seriously or not take it seriously and still get a lot out of it.
Yeah, and there's one other series I can think of that I wish I got more of, and I'm a big fan of it because I've seen a fair amount of it, but Stargate SG-1 specifically, I've seen probably half of that show, maybe a third of that show. Love it to death, but like I wish that I were a bigger fan of it back when it was still being broadcast. And that's kind of my biggest thing now is like I don't have a lot of time to keep up with stuff that's coming out. And it's always disappointing to go back to something after it's already come out. I wish...
Well, catching up is so hard if it's still a live season.
But it's also... Well, no, even after the fact, like 3-4 years after something's come and gone, I miss that anticipation of looking forward to next week's episode.
Oh, no. I went the opposite way with Breaking Bad.
Did you ground through it?
No, I never watched it when it came out. And the spoilers had come and gone to the point where I didn't remember any of the spoilers. So then Better Call Saul is starting to come out. And I'm like, I'll check out a couple episodes of Breaking Bad. And then I powerhouse through the 3 seasons, I think it is.
I don't know.
And it was just so good. And I wasn't worried, like, I need to get through this. It's just... Every day I watched an episode, maybe 2, and it's another one of those that's like 13 episodes a season. Yeah. It's nothing too bad. But it was just so good. And it was after the fact. The show had already been off the air for 2 years, maybe.
That's another show that I haven't watched, and I need to, because everybody said... There's so many shows out there that, you gotta see this, you gotta see this, you gotta see this. I actually just started... last week, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because I'm like, I need to catch up with that, because it's...
And we talked about that one, too, and I gotta say, it gets better.
Yeah.
And then it gets worse.
It gets better again. It's been okay. That's why I'm not, like, grinding through it like I probably would Firefly or something else.
What's interesting about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is if you watch it as it comes out, and then go see the movies, the events of Captain America... Winter Soldier directly influenced.
Yeah, that's what I've been told. Is like it's fit around those episodes. So yeah,
it does it really well. Yeah. Now, granted, it does like a 1 episode nod to Thor. It's like, hey, Thor's a thing.
Thor exists.
Here's the other Asgardian lady. Can't remember her name. All right, let's move on to the other story. Yeah, that's another one I suggest. In due time, when you've got the time.
I'm working on it, but yeah, it's rare to have that time. No, I don't know. I've made an effort over the years to try and catch up with some other things. Magic the Gathering is another hobby that I always missed.
I wrote it down. I scribbled it out because I thought, Magic the Gathering, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I decided, we had some friends that actually, GM of a lot of our games that we played, was big into Magic, and we lived in the same neighborhood for a while, and
you guys went crazy for that.
One day I was just like, hey, I've never played it, it'd be fun. So we started playing it before games, and so I still have boatloads of cards right over there, actually. And I love playing the game. It's a lot of fun. It's hard for me to find people to play with these days because I don't go out of my way. I don't go to game stores to play or anything like that, but I made an effort to get into that. Honestly, Dragon Con is another good example of this. I've been going to Dragon Con for I want to say this will be my 8th year, 7th year, something like that. I've been going for a while, but I regret not going sooner than I have, and going the first few years I went for a day or two. I didn't go for the whole con. So con going, I'm still getting more and more into, but I wish that I had done more of that before. And did by that token cosplay and prop building too. I wish I had done more of this when I had more time and money than I do now. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. There's so much. I was thinking about this question before we started recording. There's so much out there that you're interested in. It's impossible to keep up with everything anymore.
It's impossible to keep up. But fortunately, there's enough at the buffet where you can find what works for you. If you don't want to play Minecraft, you can play 7 or 8 different derivatives that have something more towards what you're looking for.
Yeah.
There's enough MMORPGs where you run around and swing a sword. Okay, Warcraft isn't for me. EverQuest, if it was still here, but EverQuest 3. Actually, they were trying to do an EverQuest that was where you build your own kingdom.
Yeah.
And that'll be a fun thing to cover one time, about money being squandered in a company not coming through on its promises.
Yeah.
But there's something out there for you if you look for it. And there are some things that I've heard people tell me you've got to watch, like Breaking Bad. And I'm like, okay. And it was in my time and it worked. And in the end, I'm like, maybe I should have watched that, but I still got to see it. Yeah. We're fortunate that we live in a society now where you don't have to worry about finding a bootleg tape that someone recorded.
Yeah, it's so much easier to find.
You can find whatever it is you're looking for. Yeah. And there are services like, hey, give us only $6 a month, $8 a month, and you can watch as much as you can stand.
Yeah.
And we'll even create new content for you to have to watch.
Yeah.
The last thing that I feel like I missed out on, oddly enough, Dungeons and Dragons.
I agree with that.
I didn't get exposed to it as deeply and earnestly as I would have liked.
As early as you wanted.
If it had been placed in front of me by an older cousin who knew what they were doing, but then again, this is still advanced D&D where the rules were really tricky and the math didn't make sense.
Right.
But the storytelling, I'd have gobbled that up like a true nerd.
I thought about that too when I was thinking about this topic about in high school having a friend that had some of the World of Darkness source books. And we talked about characters and we talked about games, but we never actually played any. And I always regretted not doing any of that. I was friends with the nerdiest of the nerds at my school and nobody played any of this stuff. So I don't know I don't know what was going on there, but yeah.
But you remember what those people who played were like?
I don't know that there was anybody in my school that played. Surely there was, but I don't know who they were.
But you had to run across somebody at some time at a comic book shop or someone's older brother, and I had this vision. They usually looked 20 years older than they were. So they were 20 with the hairline way back here, looking like they're 40.
The ponytail. And
They had the weird shirts that were like glossy and shiny, like
with the dragon.
With the dragon designs.
Yeah.
They had incense burning in the background. They could tell you everything about every character and every weapon. Yeah. And if you use the Eye of Sauron, that'll get you through the...
But, you know what? That goes back to a topic from earlier in this episode. When we were kids, interacting with people like that was a sure way to get yourself stuffed in a trash can. To get your...
Well, being that person it was a sure way to... I don't know.
So there was a fear, and, when I was a kid, I was interested in those kinds of things. But there was also I can't seek out I can't go asking around, does anybody play D&D? Because if I do and the wrong person hears, I'm going to get all kinds of bullying the rest of the semester. So I'm just going to shut up and just go home and play PC games.
And a thing that I told you earlier about some role-playing game future plans is the same thing I told a guy last night on stream, is the way you get people into Pathfinder is you have to recruit them. No one is going to just go, I decide today I'm playing a role-playing game.
Yeah.
They hear about it.
Yeah.
It's described to them in a way that they can ingest. Oh, that sounds kind of cool. You know what? Let me help you make a character. Come play this one time.
Yeah.
You know, it's only going to be a few hours of your day, and no big deal. You don't like it. No sweat off my back.
Yeah. And
the next thing you know, they love it.
Yeah.
And now they're building characters, and after a few months, maybe they want to run a game. You know, somehow many of our friends have said, "Oh, I really want to run a game."
I want to run a game. Yeah.
And then you and me are going, we're usually the people running the games.
We got more games we need to run.
We have terrain
so
and starships and things you need to be playing
I can't play in your game. If I play in your game, I can't run mine. I want to run mine. Yeah.
I can't. Your characters stop moving when my game's over. We got to keep going. There are a lot of fandoms that I think we missed out on, but I think there's still a way we can. We're not dead yet.
No, we've got a long history of nerddom in front of us, and it's also it's our duty to help others find those fandoms and introduce them to them if we can. Like you said, we need to recruit more people and spread the love around so that people don't have the same regrets that we do when they're our age.
So we are currently wrapping up February, which is Witches and Wizards month.
Right.
Very excited about the theme. I think it was semi-successful overall.
Yeah.
I think we could have, just being very real, we could have dedicated a little more effort to it. Yeah. But the idea with the theme was not everything is going to fit in that.
No,
theme.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're always going to be doing other side projects that don't fit it. Yeah.
We wanted it to influence the podcast a little bit.
Yeah.
To maybe give us some inspiration, to help inspire the videos we're doing.
Yeah.
But honestly, you and I are both venturing into Twitch a little bit.
Yeah, that's
which
fun.
has taken some of our attention and time.
Yeah.
So I think that going into other months, we'll probably focus a little bit more on them than we have this month. Yeah. And I have that one project I just couldn't finish in time, but I will still have it available for the website here in the next couple of days. It'll definitely be out before the podcast hits, so that's good.
Yeah, I think it's important to think of our themes that we're setting as extra guide, as extra inspiration, not as a strict set that we have to follow.
But if we're gonna have a theme, let's
do something with it. Yeah. I mean, I tried to, like I said, we've both been doing a lot of Twitch streaming, and it's been starting to be successful. We've had some folks watching, and it's a lot of fun to do. I've tried to set some of the games I've had towards that theme. I played Heretic earlier in the month, which was sort of a magic-themed Doom clone. And I've been working on a prop project to fit the month where I'm making sort of a magic little ring out of resin just to learn how to resin
which
cast.
Which is pretty cool.
I'm still not done with that. I've got to do more with it, so that's going to bleed over to the next month. But like you said, I think we could have done a little bit more to jump on that topic.
So we've semi-decided, but wanted to throw it out there one more time. Going into March, we've got a couple options. Some of them are based on a what if. What if certain stars aligned that we could make this happen? And I wouldn't want to bet on something that would be possibly a failure, which is something I know we could accomplish better later.
Yeah.
So some of the themes that we're really, really excited for, they may be better off another 2-3 months from now.
Yeah, they'll be a little bit later.
When we can definitely knock them out of the park.
Sure.
So, are you still feeling good about the one we talked about?
I think so. I think it's a good way to go.
Yeah. So, and which one is it now?
So we're going to make March Block Month. Is the name that we've chosen. We could also probably call it Builder Month.
Builder Month,
but I like Block Month.
Building Block Month.
Building Block Month. Good
Building
word.
Block Month.
But yeah, so. We're going to theme definitely some streaming, some videos that we already have in mind that we're going to do soon around this. We're going to do a really fun aspect to our next podcast. That's going to be great. We'll reveal that when the time comes.
Let's save that reveal. But it's going to have its own
You're going to want to tune in. It's going to be a lot of fun.
But yeah, building blocks in general, block building. I mean, I'm not giving away anything that's too obvious, but Minecraft is a big component with building blocks, and that's something that you and I both have played individually. We had our own server. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be a lot of fun to maybe host a tour of our old server.
Yeah,
maybe.
we can do that. If I still have the files, I don't even know if I do.
BKV, we've got to have the file somewhere.
Surely, to goodness, there's
surely do. With all the new block types, that's the thing that some of the things I've built before on our old server, I'd love to get back in there, dig it out.
I haven't been in the game in 2 years, probably. I don't know any of the new updates. So, I'm anxious to see some of it.
We will talk Minecraft updates. I will have a list for you for the next podcast.
Okay.
There's some subtle things.
Well, hopefully we'll be playing the game before the next podcast, in fact.
We'll see. Yeah. But yeah, there's some block updates. Maybe I could just show you the block updates.
Yeah, we'll see.
If you can keep from going into your creative and like, what
Oh,
can
no,
I
I'm not going to
use?
cheat. I won't cheat. I promise.
Although that's I don't regret it, but our old server, Bumpkinville, we did use it creative to get the blocks we needed, but we built everything by hand. Which is...
almost everything. There was one structure on there that I built with editing.
The shit?
The stadium. The baseball stadium.
Oh, God,
that I built?
yeah.
I had to. There was no way I was going to build that.
I remember. The Creeper Stadium?
I think, something like that. It was beautiful.
God, we had all the animals still on there, but you had so much shadow once you got in through the front turnstiles. Yeah. There are creepers everywhere.
Yeah.
There were some in the stands, which is kind of cool. Looked like they were there for the game.
I would love to go back and redo that project with all the new updates.
The creeper that blew up the bottom floor of my hospital. That scared the hell out of me. Because I forgot to turn on my creative, and I'm like just walking through, and you're in the bottom of a hospital.
A creepy hospital.
And it's dark down there because they hadn't added all the new lighting blocks that they have now. Yeah. I don't think they even had redstone lamps. They didn't have redstone lamps by then either. Did they? No, they just had regular...
That was right around the time they started introducing
regular glowstone.
You added them in another building later on.
Yeah. Just regular glowstone. And then... the lighthouse. I forgot about the lighthouse.
Yeah.
I love the lighthouse. And then... I heard a zombie. I thought, oh crap, there's a zombie. And then blew up all my crap. So a building block month, it will be a little nostalgic for us.
Yeah. But I'm excited. It's going to fit with our theme. You know, the Foundry, that's kind of our main goal and purpose is crafting and creation. And
for some people, resin and terrain with polystyrene and paints and tools and all that, sometimes that's a hard sort of hobby to get into.
It can be complicated, yeah.
But Minecraft you can get on an iPhone for $6 and play.
Yeah. And it's fairly user-friendly now and straightforward.
So not just Minecraft, but the idea of building blocks and assembling
games,
creating. I'm really excited about that. That'll be a fun month. So we can announce it officially once the podcast drops, I guess.
Which will be right at the start of the month.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What else do you have that you're working on in the meantime as we wrap things up?
Like I said, we've been doing some Twitch streaming. I'm trying to Twitch stream as regularly as possible on Tuesday and Thursday evenings at 7 Eastern is my normal time. So you can catch me on 9 to 5 Gamer. On Twitch. I am kind of alternating between playing games, because that's what I do, and also prop work. Like I said, I've started working on resin crafting, teaching myself how to do that, because I've never done it before. There is a really, really exciting costuming project that I need to start very soon.
I know this one?
If you've watched some of my streams, I've talked about it. But beyond that, I don't know that I've told you.
I've watched some of your streams.
I don't think... You may have not seen it all. Okay. But it's going to be a prop for another person's costume for Dragon Con. I would really like to try and get it at least on the way to being done by the end of the month, by the end of March. If not completely done by then. I don't know if I will be able to, given how busy I'm going to be this month. But that's the goal. Right now I'm going to be working on that. And I'm also trying desperately to find a costume for myself for Dragon Con. the con is 6 months away. I need to start now on a costume. It's going to take me that much time to put it together. So I'm desperately in search of a costume that speaks to me, that I want to do, that I want to put together and have ready.
That's hard. And we've talked before about the costume that fits your personality. Mm-hmm. Does it present you or does it conceal you? Mm-hmm. Do you want to be on stage or not? Mm-hmm. And then does it fit your body type? And I may not want to dress up as Chun-Li. Probably not a good choice.
You could, but I wouldn't recommend it.
I could pull off the legs, but beyond that, not much else.
You do have quick kicks.
I do have quick kicks. I am sort of the feminine version of Ryu. Yeah. Some people have told me, or Ryu. Yeah. That's got to be a tough decision, and that's the thing that I'm still debating. I've never been to a convention, and we're still trying to get me to at least one, if not Dragon Con is my first this year. So many things to figure out about money and where to stay.
It's not easy to necessarily go, yeah.
And then the last thing would be making my costume. You don't have to have one.
No,
but
it's perfectly enjoyable without a costume.
But we're the kind of people who want to. So I definitely empathize with you on that.
How about you? You got anything going on right now?
I'm still developing my stream. It's been a lot of fun.
I love the layout of your stream. I love the overlay you have. It looks great.
And I'm going to beg your help. I have 3 technical projects that I need very basic help, one of which is making my night camera work so that I can have Hedgehog Cam, Peter Cam,
Quill Cam.
And that way you can watch my streams. They're usually at night when my hedgehog gets up and runs in his wheel or eats. So I've got to decide whether I just have it where you can see into his house at the wheel, or do I create a wooden sort of shelf that sits over his house so that the camera can swivel and focus on him and his wheel. And if he gets up and runs over to his food and his water, I could pan down towards him.
Oh, okay.
He would see it, and the sound of the camera might freak him out.
You might not want to do that. I don't know. You might just want to put it in the corner and let it see all.
Yeah, just see him running in his wheel.
Right.
So Peter Cam is something that I want to get up within the next month.
Yeah.
And then just finish up the video I'm working on.
Yeah.
Dive in head first to Block Month, because the server that I used to play on, I have an entire 3/4 of a castle I need to finish building. I've got the layout done. I just need to finish walls and interiors and all that, and some of which you haven't even seen since I've changed it.
I logged on there just to check, make sure everything got logged correctly, but I saw all kinds of things I didn't recognize, and I purposely didn't look into it because I knew at some point we were going to explore
And what
together.
you haven't seen is your little cabin.
Yeah. I saw my cabin because I spawned in the cabin.
Oh, you spawned the cabin? You saw where I kept all the livestock?
Yeah, everything's everything's protected there, which is good.
Yeah, I had to catch some livestock to breed them real quick because I have a tower that I was calling the Ark, and I was going to put 2 of each animal in there so they wouldn't despawn, but I could only have so many, so now I have to build a second Ark. So it's going to be all the cows and chickens and pigs and mushrooms and horses, and then over here is going to be the cats and wolves and rabbits and blah 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 blah. So the Ark is in the middle of that lake that's right behind your cabin,
right where I was going to build the mage tower.
Right. So this is a temporary home where at least I have a platform that you could, if I move the animals, perfect for mage tower.
Right. So we're excited about that project, and we're excited about playing Minecraft again. We're excited about all these things we're planning for Block Month, and we're excited about all the other projects we've got planned. But for tonight, I guess we should wrap up this episode of the FoundryCast.
Yeah, as always, if you're listening to the podcast, you probably already know about the FoundryCast.com.
Yep.
And if you're checking us out there and you haven't already seen our streams, you can find me at CraftyBeeGamer on both YouTube and on Twitch.
And I'm 9to5Gamer, that's with the digits, not the letters, on also Twitch and also YouTube and Twitter and all that other good stuff too.
We're all over the digital verse.
Yeah, so reach out to us, follow us, and let us know what you think, and give us comments and suggestions for future episodes. We're always happy to hear from other folks. And I guess that does it for tonight.
Yeah, until next time, I am the secret of gummy berry juice.
And I'm the pale blue dot. And this has been the FoundryCast. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Welcome to Fartopia. Da, 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 da.